I hope all of you are doing well. My name is Shriya Bansal and I'm currently working as a software engineer at Microsoft. And let's quickly get started talking about operating systems today. So first, we'll give a very basic definition to operating system. So operating system is basically a program that acts as an intermediary between a user of a computer and the computer hardware. So you have your hardware, right? You have a CPU, you have a monitor, you have a keyboard. But for the user to be able to interact with that hardware, store data in that hardware, use the keyboard to basically write some instructions, we need some intermediary layer. Okay, and that layer is known as, or that program is known as operating system. Okay, so operating system is simply an interface or a layer between computer user and the machine. The purpose of an operating system is to provide an environment in which a user can execute programs. Okay, so the moment you provide an environment, right, then the user is able to execute programs in that environment. And the primary goal of an operating system is thus to make sure that the computer system is convenient to use. So whenever you have a computer system, like I told you, computer hardware, you need a useful and an effective way so that a user can able to use that computer system conveniently, and operating system very well provides that layer. Okay. It's very important, you know, that for every computer, it is primary importance that every computer must have an operating system in order to run other programs. Okay, so the operating system coordinates the use of hardware among the various systems programs and application programs for various users. Okay, so you can think of an operating system simply like similarly like a government, right? Means an operating system provides no useful function, okay, though it does provides an environment within which programs can do useful work. Okay, that is what similarly an operating system is. Okay. In brief, right, operating system contains a set of programs that controls the computer hardware or controls the computer. Okay. Some of the examples of the computer operating systems would be Unix, Mac, MS-DOS, MS Windows, Windows NT, Mac OS, and OS 2. Okay. So these are a few popularly used operating systems. Okay, Windows is designed by Microsoft, Mac OS is designed by Apple, right? So we have different operating systems available which provide a useful way for a user to interact with the hardware. And also an operating system is an important part of almost every computer system. What you will realize is that operating system is basically present in every almost computer system. It is not possible to have an effective and convenient computer system without having operating system present in it. Okay, so that's what the overall idea is. All right. Now here, whenever we think of a computer system, okay, a computer system basically has 4 components. So remember, in future also when we will use the term computer system, we effectively mean these 4 components. First, the hardware. Second, the operating system. Third, application programs. And fourth, the users. Okay, so diagrammatically we can think of all of them like this in this structure which is present. The lowest level present is the computer hardware. Then on top of computer hardware, we have a wrapper around it, which is an operating system. On top of that, we have all the application programs which you have, system and application programs. And on top of that, you have the different users available which are interacting with the application program. Those application program could be a software, a text editor, right? If you're running a program, it could be a compiler, assembler. All of these are present in the system and application layer. Okay, so these are what all 4 different components is. Okay. Whenever we talk about over here, the computer hardware, it basically consists of the CPU, the memory, the input-output devices, and it provides basic computing resources for the system. Let's quickly take a look at this as well in terms of writing all these points. so that we have a fair idea of how we are going to work on. Here, components of a computer system. First, we have the computer hardware. Okay, the computer hardware basically consists of the CPU, the computer memory, input output devices, okay, and it basically provides basic computing resources for the system. Okay, that's what computer hardware is, which is at the bottom. Next, what we have is the operating system. We've already talked about operating system. Operating system basically is used to control hardware and coordinate its use among various application programs. It is basically used to control the hardware and coordinates its use with various application programs. Next, what we have is the application programs. What all do we include in application programs, first of all? Okay, it basically contains spreadsheets, web browsers, word processors, etc. Okay, so they are used to define the ways in which these resources are used to solve computing problems of the user. Okay, then the last one that we have over here is basically the different users, okay, which are available on the system. Users are people like us only who are trying to use the system, and these are all the 4 components which basically are available. So when we think of operating systems, they are mainly designed for 2 purposes. The first is to control the application and use the system's resources among the various tasks. And secondly, to provide an interface between the computer hardware and the programmer that simplifies and makes it feasible for coding, creation of application programs, and debugging. Okay, so that's what the entire idea is, and how do we define the system or computer system view. Okay, next, a few important definitions that you need to know about operating systems would be that first, resource allocator. Okay, so there is something going to be a resource allocator, which we will talk about also when we will move to processes concept, which is used and which is managing and which is allocating the resources. Then we also have control program, which controls the execution of user programs and the operations of the input output devices. And then the most important thing, I believe, is the kernel. Kernel is that one program which is running at all times, okay, all else being application program. So kernel is one program that is running at all times. Apart from that, everything is an application program. Okay, so whenever we talk about the components of an operating system, it's basically having 2 components. First component is the kernel and the second component is the shell. So you can think of kernel as an active part of an operating system. Okay, that means it is that part of the operating system which is running at all times, and it is actually a program which interacts with the hardware. For example, when you are using mouse, when you are using keyboard, right, everything, these devices, they are not just accessible directly, there are device drivers for that. Every device has a different device driver using which we can interact with that device and use it on our programs. So kernel basically interacts with those device drivers, system files, and all to basically make sure that everything works intact and in one place. Second thing that we have is the shell. Shell is also known as the command interpreter. It is a set of the programs which is used to interact with the application programs. Okay, so kernel is basically used for interacting with the device drivers as a part of operating system, whereas shell is the command interpreter which is used to interact with the application programs and not the device drivers. It is responsible for execution of instructions which are given to the operating system. So whatever instructions are given to the operating system, they are more or less known as, I would say, commands, and those commands, shell is basically responsible for executing all of those commands. Okay, so that is what the overall idea is. Okay, and that is how we divide the operating system also further in two different components. Okay, and that's how you have to remember it as well. Kernel is something that will come again a lot, right? So it's important that you understand the importance and of kernel as well as shell. Okay. The next thing we have is, what are the objectives? Why do we really use operating system? First, to basically hide the details of the hardware. As a user, I should only be aware about how my application program is running, how the different applications I am directly interacting with is working. Internally, how the operating system is using the hardware is not of my concern. So operating systems provide a good layer of abstraction between the hardware and the user. Okay. Second is to allocate resources to processes. For example, I am basically doing a task on some application, and that task basically requires CPU or some other resources over there. So I should personally be not responsible for taking care of the fact that, you know, how this resource will come or how that resource will come. Based on what task I am performing, the operating system should be responsible for the allocation of the right amount of resources to the process or the program that I am executing. Okay, so what is a process? A program which is currently being executed is a process. Okay, so that is how, when I'm executing a program, it becomes a process and it is going to require some resources. So that management and that allocation of resources is done by operating system. Then obviously here, if you are using operating system, we also want, since we are operating with application programs which are running on top of operating systems, we want to make sure that the experience and the user interface is very pleasant and very, very effective. So operating systems do need to take care of the fact as well that the user interface that they provide is very effective, optimized, and pleasant to use as well. Okay, so that's what is the overall idea about operating system. So far, what all we've covered about what exactly is an operating system, right? What are the all four components of a computer system, right? And then we did talk about what are all the components of an operating system, not a computer system. In an operating system, we have a kernel, we have a shell, and then we talked about what are the key objectives of the operating system, right? What should an operating system do take care of in order for effective, I would say, and efficient use of the computer's hardware. Okay. Next, what we have is a lot of system components are present inside operating systems. Okay. There are a lot of components, okay, or I would say not exactly components, but like a lot of tasks. Okay, the operating system acts as a manager of the resources. Like I told you, operating system takes care of the management and the allocation of resources. So it has to basically acts as a manager between a lot of management tasks. Okay, that happens inside a particular, I would say, that happens inside a particular operating system. Okay, it could be process management, main memory management, file management, input output system management, secondary management, networking, protection system, and command interpreter system. So these are all the management tasks which are being managed by the operating system. So here in the next video itself, we'll take a very brief introduction about all of these. But what you will see in the corresponding modules after that is that for almost all of them, we are going to have detailed discussion about how all of these system components really work. Okay, so we are going to have a deep discussion after this where we are going to talk about how all of these system components are very, very effective in their use. Okay, so we'll just keep it this much for today's video because I think here this is enough to get a very high level overview and introduction about what an operating system is and what all components are related to it. As we'll move ahead, we'll start moving and talking a little bit about the management tasks, right, which is managed by the operating system and what role does the operating system plays in the management of these tasks. Okay, so stay tuned for the next video as well and make sure this one is clear, and if it is, you can definitely move on to the next one. Bye.